Okay. So thank you, everyone. The discussion was so interesting that we lost track of time, and Bhavin says he'll continue with the next panel discussion. So over the past few years, we have made several trips to Uttarakhand, and invariably, like whatever we have seen, and I have seen personally, such things only can happen when there is a good civil administration that diligently does its job. So what they had with what I would like to continue further with introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. R. Meenakshi Sundaram. Dr. R. Meenakshi Sundaram is a 2001 batch officer of Uttarakhand, cadre of the Indian Administrative Service. He's a postgraduate in veterinary sciences with distinctions in all along. He has served as the Chief Development Officer of 2 districts and District Magistrate of 3 districts. In his glittering career, he has been involved in virtually every aspect of governance, starting from urban development to home training, IT industries, housing, chief minister's staff, animal husbandry, horticulture, agriculture, food, dairy, aviation, tourism, religious affairs, cooperative border area development, and education, which we are all concerned today. Tourism, religious affairs, corporate borders, area development and education is so evident. If there is anyone who has a holistic view of the applications of good education, it is Dr. Meenakshi Sundaram. We are therefore indeed privileged to have him among us today and are thankful to him for his guidance and participation in the webinar. We would also like to extend our gratitude to all the officials of the Education Department of the Government of Uttarakhand. And also I would like to add that Dr. Meenakshi Sundaram just very willingly he said that bilkul hum participate karenge, and he would like to share all what Uttarakhand is doing, which I've got to know through his office people that kitna kaam ho raha hai. So over to you, Dr. Meenakshi Sundaram. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Sapna ji. Good evening, everybody. It is a pleasure to join all of you in this discussion on new education policy. Of course, this policy document has been in the public domain for so long. Government of India had elaborate stakeholder consultation this time before finalizing the policy document. So many of you must have seen the document before its finalization also and after its finalization. So it was a very, very comprehensive work done by a broad spectrum of individuals who are important stakeholders in the sphere of education. Of course, the policy document has got 2 portions, one that deals with the school education part and other portion which deals with higher education, which includes the technical education. So we will be focusing today on the part that deals with school education, because most of the stakeholders here are from school education department. The policy, the Government of India has come out with a very comprehensive national education policy after so many decades. Now, this policy document is so different from the earlier documents because it has been designed to reflect present day reality in education, and what has been happening across the globe in various countries has been taken into consideration before finalizing this document. Of course, education, as all of you know, will is in the contemporary list in the constitution. That means both center and state have got a domain, and both center and state can come out with their policies, their law rules governing the sphere of education. Government of India has come out with this document, and as you know, the policy document is always a statement of intent. The policy only shows which way we want it to be directed. Now, to implement the policy, we need a lot of things to follow. It's not that you declare a policy document and then from the very next day things do change. As written in the policy document, it doesn't happen that way. So it is in the hands of both the central government and state government to bring into existence a number of things that have been envisaged in the policy document one by one. Of course, it depends upon a lot of things, such as for example, some provisions may require an amendment in certain existing laws. Then some of the provisions may require the central government or the state government or both to come out with modified rules. And some of the provisions may require budgetary support. So all of these have to be meticulously planned and then executed. Government of India advised the various state governments to come out with committees for coming out with roadmap for execution of the policy. Uh, so the state government of Uttarakhand has also constituted a committee, and very soon we will be discussing with all the committee members about the modalities of making this change, a very calibrated one, and which does not create huge disruption, but creates a positive orientation to students in future. And as far as the special features of this particular policy is, the first thing is we are changing from a 10+2 system to a 5+3+3+4 system. So now what does it mean? For the first time, Government of India has given recognition to the nursery and pre-nursery classes, and has even advocated including them in the government education system as well. As far as current position is concerned, we do have the Anganwadi system, and that invariably means that merging the Anganwadi system with the school education system has to take place. For the government schools, they have suggested coming out with the school complexes where everything is stationed within a complex, where right from the pre-nursery to the higher secondary or the intermediate level classes will be conducted in one complex. Then the second important thing is examinations will be conducted in 3rd, 5th, and 8th, and not annually. And then the third important thing is a lot of stress is placed on vocational and skilling. As we all know, only 30% of 30 to 40% of people who complete their school education enter into higher education here in our country. So now what the rest of the people do? The rest of the people, some of them may be, taking some courses through distance learning, or many of them are joining the workforce. And suppose if people are joining the workforce in such huge numbers, uh, uh, by skilling them and by giving them vocational education support at the school level, we can ensure that the bulk of these people are skilled workforce, and their average earning will increase once they are efficient in certain skills. So this is another important change that has been brought about in the new education policy. And if I talk about higher education, then in higher education, opening the sector to foreign universities is a very, very important thing. In fact, the policy document also advocates, abolishing certain bodies such as the UGC and the All India Council of Technical Education. Now, these are very, very far-reaching changes. In fact, the Union Cabinet has already cleared a law which enables setting up of foreign universities in the country. So I think there are exciting times for the education sector, both in the school education as well as higher education. We, all of us, have to prepare ourselves for these changes. Of course, there have been a lot of suggestions for the boards also, how the boards can reorient themselves to um, right from fixing the syllabus to conduct of examinations. So a lot of brainstorming has to take place within the boards also. For the first time, the Government of India has allowed taking up multiple boards also, multiple boards in a school and multiple boards for a child also. So these are some of the very, very far-reaching changes, and have been taken with a lot of thought process going into it. So now I would like to stop at this level, and I would like to hear all other panelists here. And in fact, if any of the fellow panelists or any participant has got something to ask from me, I'm open to questions, taking questions and then answering them. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, sir, with your permission, and Sapna ma'am, you want to add? Okay. So I hear you. So, sir, a lot of participants, and because this is Uttarakhand centric, the first and foremost, which I think so panelists are also eager to listen, is what is the action plan that Uttarakhand has made to deploy NEP, and from when it's going to start?
See, I have already told that Uttarakhand has constituted a committee under the chairmanship of the state education minister, and I'll be the member secretary of the committee. So we have included a number of people, stakeholders, various stakeholders in the committee as well. So we will hold elaborate discussions and prepare the roadmap. Now, me telling on my own that this is going to be the roadmap will not be proper, because I am also a member of the committee, and we plan to hold large, broad-based discussions before coming out with the roadmap. And once the roadmap is prepared, then it will be made public for the benefit of everybody.
So, sir, any work that is started in the area of preschool or K-12 or the colleges, any consensus, or yet it is not, the discussion has not yet been started?
As all of you know, the play schools are not currently under any regulatory regime. In fact, it was the concern expressed repeatedly, even by school people, and then even outside the public and journalists also repeatedly express how they are completely unregulated. Now, under the new education policy, we will come out with a proper regulatory framework governing them as well.
Okay. Sir, in the cluster format, there is and you mentioned saying the policies, its intent has to be seen, and obviously then state is going to come together to deploy it. In one of the points, it's mentioned saying in the cluster format, a public school will be mapped with a private school. Can you throw more light so that the panelists in the schools which are here, largely which are private school, and the association heads who are here, how this mapping is going to be in effect, and how the planning is going to be taken forward? Any light on that?
No, probably I was misunderstood on this point. What I told was, it has nothing to do with the private schools. It has everything to do with only the government schools. Currently, you have the primary school at some location, then the secondary school at another location. So the policy document suggests that all the schools will be stationed in school complexes, which will include the Anganwadi centers as well, so that we can have a proper 5+3+3+4 education system. Now it requires a lot of mergers happening. Now the mergers will have its own challenges. You know, one challenge is a budgetary challenge. Suppose if you are coming out with new buildings for coming out with the school complexes, it is going to put enormous strain on the resources, and how much Government of India will be able to support the state, and how much the state has to raise its own resources. We will have to see all those things. The second thing is the conflict with respect to the human resources. Once we start merging everything, basic education as well as secondary education, because they are governed by various cadres of teachers. We have got elementary school teachers as a separate cadre, then we have got the LT teachers who look into basically the secondary schools, and the intermediate colleges, the 11th and 12th have got lecturers. So now merging everybody together will have its own challenges of cadre management. So all these challenges are there, but anyhow, since the document has been finalized by Government of India, we will go through all these challenges one by one.
Dr. Rashid has a question, sir.
Hi.
Yeah.
Dr. Sundram, this is Rashid Sharfuddin. I'm headmaster of Selako International School, Dehradun, which is a boarding school. So I have a question with regard to one of the proposal of a NEP, and that talks about bringing 2 crore children, probably more, back into the system who have been left out of the system. That, of course, if I understand it correctly, over next 10-15 years, that would mean huge investment, both in terms of classroom, physical infrastructure, appointing teachers, headmasters, etc. How do you propose to go about it when still you have so many schools, especially government schools, where vacancies are still not filled?
As far as filling up of government vacancies in government schools, see, it's a continuous process. You know, you fill some vacancies and then new vacancies do arise. So you keep on doing it. It's not that, you know, you fix the solution at one go. So the problems will keep arising from time to time, and you'll have to address it from time to time. As far as the current position is concerned, we have already advertised our lecturer vacancies, and our LT vacancies have also been advertised by the Subordinate Service Commission, and lecturer vacancies announced by the Public Service Commission. Now we have got a good window, from Supreme Court, that we can appoint guest teachers if at all there is some time taken by the Public Service Commission to finalize the recruitment process and intimate to us. So what the government can do is, the government can fill up the position temporarily by using guest teachers. So this is a huge opportunity given to us. In fact, after the verdict, we immediately had gone ahead and filled all the vacancies with guest teachers. Now, once the regular appointees do come, of course, they will have to make way for the regular appointees. As far as the primary school teachers are concerned, we had a lot of vacancies. In fact, the recruitment procedure was repeatedly stalled because of some writ petitions in the High Court. So finally, we requested the Honorable High Court to merge all the writ petitions. There are 44 in total. Merge all the writ petitions and then entrust the job of hearing to a single bench. So once this was done, we made our plea to the single bench that allow us to do the recruitment so that the student get the teacher. And in case if there is a verdict otherwise taken by the High Court finally, when they dispose of the writ petition, then we will adhere to that final verdict. So with this condition, we can issue appointment orders to the selected people. So finally, the High Court had agreed to it. So we are going to publish the advertisement for primary teachers as well. So we are solving the solution comprehensively, but it doesn't mean that next year we don't get a situation again, because it's a continuous process and we'll have to address the problems continuously.
Yeah, Sapna ma'am, and then
I have got a question.
So,
Okay,
Dr.
Sapna ma'am,
Sundaram, there's a question by Commander Banga. He's an educationist, and many others have endorsed this question, so I club it as one. The chapter 5 of NEP on the teacher has very nicely brought up the features of recruitment and development, service environment and culture, continuous professional development, whereas the policy under the key point on approach to teacher education regarded integrated B.Ed course for 4-year of course does not mention anything. How the teachers will be selected or how can be given this course is not very clear, which means anyone who qualifies the test or gets some marks can apply it or can undergo this course, which is opening now as well. It's highly recommended that teachers who are, or people who are dedicated to this profession or keenly want to join. What is your take on that? We would like to hear, since you're appointing government teachers and you just spoke so well about it.
Okay, so as you may be knowing already, the secondary teachers are always B.Ed graduates, and the primary teachers they undergo their certification course from our teacher training institutes, or the DIETs as we call. Now after that, for the primary teachers, we have another qualifying examination called TET. So once a person qualifies the TET, then he becomes eligible for appointment to be to the post of assistant teacher in a primary school. Then the selection procedure takes over. Now, as far as secondary teachers are concerned, we have entrusted the job to the Public Service Commissions. For the LT, it is Subordinate Service Commission, and for lecturer, it is the Uttarakhand Public Service Commission. Earlier, there used to be an interview-based selection, and last year we have changed the service rule to convert it into a written examination. Written competitive examination will be held by the respective Public Service Commissions to select the teachers. As far as enhancement of their qualities are concerned, of course, in government side, we do have the SCRTs and the DIETs who give continuous training to the teachers throughout their career. Now we have a NCTE, National Council of Teacher Education, which is a regulatory body for teacher education. So NCTE comes up with its norms again and again. So as I stated already, that policy is only a statement of intent, and it has to be followed up by other changes. So the NCTE may amend its act accordingly to come out with a suitable regulatory regime to ensure that the quality of the teacher's education is elevated to a higher level.
Dr. Kashyap, please.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. I have got two questions, sir. And
Yeah,
both the
good evening.
questions are very important for the development of our Uttarakhand.
Yeah.
Number one is, from last 25 years, it has been the demand of the institutions who wanted to start schools in Uttarakhand particularly. As you know, sir, Uttarakhand is a hub for excellent schools in India.
Yeah.
We have not only
Sir, go on.
we have not only 60% children from all over India, but 40% children from many countries of the world are studying in Uttarakhand.
Okay.
Uttarakhand is one state where we have got like 440 crore rupees of income on account of fees, and more than 440 crores of income when the parents visit every month or alternate month or twice in a year to attend the Founders Day function or to meet the children. So there have been the demand for many others from many other states. Number of educationists or the managements wanted to start schools in Uttarakhand, and they had one question. There should be one window system for getting the land, opening schools, for electricity, for water, for getting the map passed. Is there any plan under this new scheme that so that Uttarakhand again becomes not only the hub of center, but it becomes the excellence for hub for education in India?
Okay.
This
So
is question number one.
I am very glad to state that we are already working on the single window system. You may be knowing that the industry department has come out with a single window system, and Ernst & Young is the consultant who has been appointed to develop the system. And on similar lines, the education department is also coming out with a single window system. And Ernst & Young is again developing our portal and all. And within a month of, I think within 2 to 3 months, the portal will be ready.
Excellent. So I have another question, sir, which is again very important. As you know, that there are more than 240 schools in Uttarakhand who are residential schools having children from 100 to 500 or 600. In many residential schools, there are a lot of problems, sir. Schools which were started long time back. There is a history. We have got schools which were started 150 years back. The residential schools I'm talking in Mussoorie. The Oak Grove School, the Waverly Convent, and many other institutions in the whole of Uttarakhand, sir. Now, they are having a lot of problems. They are finding difficulty from the different departments from time to time, and there is no solution to those problems because every school is finding difficulty. At the same time, also in day school also, number of good day schools have been opened here in Uttarakhand, and people invested a lot of money. There should be a healthy competition among all the schools and healthy organizations, whether the Parents Teacher Association is concerned. Now also you find the government gave the order that the 9 district magistrates gave the report that 60 to 70% schools are ready to open the classes from 9 to class 12. But some parents, they keep on writing down to encouraging the parents not to pay the fees, not to send the children till some medicine comes. That may come in the month of January, or they may come in the month of July or any time afterwards. So there is a lot of rumors which are going on. Why the government should not give very clear understanding in that part. Not I'm saying that it should be that we can have the meetings with these parents teacher associations whosoever held, whether they are recognized or not recognized, and why there should not be little control, as there is a control on all the schools. If anything happening, as you know, sir, in last 3 years here in Dehradun, number of schools were damaged, property worth of lakhs of rupees in that part. But there was no action taken. The matter was reported to the government. To the
I will stop you at this moment because see, there are n number of issues that concern the schools, and we are aware of that, and we are sensitive to that. But we have been talking on these topics so many times, and you can come to my office even if further intervention is required from our end. But this particular discussion is kept on the new education policy. So it will be better if we keep the discussion focused on that.
Okay.
So my request is,
Okay.
in new education policy, if the environment is not proper, if there is not a conducive environment for the schools, how the head of the institution can carry on with their all plans, and how with the new education policy, when we are talking about new skill education, we are talking about research and development, we are talking about critical thinking, so many other things, sir. How there has to be conducive environment. And for conducive environment, government has to play a very important role. You know the difficulties, you know the educational institutions, the schools, they submit their proper returns to the income tax department. They are verified by the chartered accountant, right? They are paying tax from lakhs and lakhs of rupees in that part. But very few people, a handful of people, they are trying to make the system worse in that part.
Yeah, Dr. Sundaram.
See, we have discussed this issue a number of times, and of course, you mentioned about parents not willing to send their children to schools in spite of schools reopening. If you look at the Ministry of Home guidelines and the Ministry of Education guidelines, it states very, very clearly that it will be the sweet will of the parents. If the parents are willing to send the children to school, then they can send. If they don't want to send, the school or the state government will not force them to attend the classes. So this is a Government of India guideline, and we are not here to discuss about a Government of India guideline. You know, it has been prepared with much thought process. Education is, of course, very, very important, but at the same time, health is also important. So Government of India, in its own wisdom, has come out with this because see, these are not normal times that we are in. We are in some very, very abnormal times. You know, my age is 47, and I have not seen a year like this, the 2020 year. Not just with respect to the schools, but with respect to every sphere of our social life. It has been a terribly disruptive year. So we cannot expect normalcy, to happen in this particular year. And as far as some disruptive elements coming and disturbing schools is concerned, simple thing is, there are law enforcing agencies. There is a district magistrate sitting there in the district. There is a superintendent of police sitting there. As and when a disturbance happens, you just inform us and we will respond. And if they don't respond, then talk to me. Then if I don't respond, then you have the minister, you have the chief secretary sitting there. So it's a very small state, and sitting in the state capital, you have the advantage of, you can easily reach out to people.
Yes.
Which may not be possible for somebody in Lucknow or somebody in Gorakhpur to talk to the education secretary sitting in Lucknow, or the principal secretary education sitting in Lucknow. We are all very approachable. So I don't think you should make a huge matter of small incidents happening. It's a huge country, and you have all kinds of people sitting here. So
Understood. No, this is correct. This is correct, sir.
I appreciate, sir. We have been getting all the
Dr.
information
Kashyap
from you.
Dr. Kashyap, I think we should give other people also a chance.
Dr. Kashyap.
I would like to ask something, Dr. Sundaram. So while I was approaching you and we tried to connect with all the 13 districts, so I got to know that how much quantum of work they are doing, and every time they said that they are attending meetings and how much the teachers are progressing. So would you just like to highlight about the rural sector, what the teachers are doing? Because I spoke to them personally and they really appreciated the work which is being done by the government in different languages. So if you could just highlight, because it's a learning for us, that how rural India is progressing so much under your leadership and others who are doing it, because I was fortunate to talk to all these people and just got to know that what sort of work is being done in the state-run schools. So please highlight on that if you can.
Okay, see, as far as the government education system is concerned, the principal challenge with respect to the primary education is getting quality teachers. Now you will be asking me, you are conducting the diet courses, and then you are conducting a TET exam. A TET exam is considered as one of the toughest exams to qualify. I was told that the pass percentage in TET is 30 to 40%. 60 to 70% students, they don't clear the TET exam. So it's a very tough exam, and after qualification, how can you say that qualified teachers are not available? Yeah. Now the issue is all these selection procedure for coming out with a screening examination and all has happened in the recent past only. Now when we go a little back, So bulk of our teachers have been appointed more than 10 years back. Now, most of them have come through some other back channel. If I say it in a proper language, you might have heard about the Shiksha Mitra, Shiksha Acharya. There were a lot of vacancies pending in basic education across the states, and different states had come out with a different way of recruitment. And not all the recruitment processes adopted were very, very transparent. So that has resulted in a lot of substandard people getting admitted into the basic education system. Now, for the past 10 years, we have been getting really good basic teachers, and the quality keeps on improving every year. And it will take a little while, till we completely get rid of these people who have not come through merit and joined the service. Now, the number is very huge. Once when some number is very huge, it becomes very difficult to come out with some really tough action. So even then, after the NCTE Act came into picture and the NCTE started framing guidelines for recruitment to basic education, the situation has been improving. As far as secondary teachers are concerned, the basic problem is not with the quality but with the quantity. So there used to be a lot of vacancies, and then the recruitment usually takes a lot of time. Now, with this window given by the Supreme Court that we can appoint guest teachers as and when required on a purely temporary basis, that has given us a huge relief. And as far as the government school teachers are concerned, some of them are very highly motivated. I was really surprised to see very recently we had to select the government school teachers for President Award. And I was going through the findings of the screening committee. I was really surprised that there were so many candidates who have done exemplary work, and it was a tough job to select 2 people to be finally recommended to Government of India for the award. So I feel that the government schools are doing well, have at least started doing well. And the other problem with government schools is, we take all those children who are not taken by the private schools.
Yes.
They are underprivileged students, poor students coming from underprivileged background. Their parents are not educated. So such children are taken in by government schools, and it is really a tough task to teach them. And most of the teaching happens in schools only. When we take a slum children in our schools, whatever teaching happens in the school, that's all. They don't have parents who are educated who sit there and teach the kids further. Or the parents are not in a position to spend money on their tuition and all. So going by all these facts, I don't feel that the government teachers and the government schools are performing very poorly. They are doing pretty decently, and we hope to improve it further.
Just the last question.
Once again,
to
Sapna ma'am. Okay, I think so. You continue the question. I think so. Meeta ma'am is waiting since long, and then Sapna ma'am, and then Sumya, so that then we can have another 5-7 minutes to close it. Meeta ma'am, you can start the question, and then Sapna ma'am.
Good evening, Dr. Sundaram. This is Meeta. I am the head of school of Mussoorie International School. My question, I'm going to bring you straight back to the NEP. And my question to you is that 8.7 in the NEP says that the public and private schools will be assessed and accredited on the same criteria, benchmarks, and processes. And there is too much stress on national assessment now in the NEP with Parakh coming in. Parakh will cooperate with NCERT, and assessment will be for both private and public schools. Am I correct or in understanding that the future of CBSE and the future of ICSE and ISC as boards is in some kind of danger? And now that the assessment is going to be completely taken on by the Central Assessment Board, though it says that the states will be encouraged to have their own assessment survey. What exactly does this mean?
See, as I have told, the policy document is only a statement of intent. All the modalities have to be decided now, some of them by the central government and some of them by the state government. and both governments have constituted respective committees for discussion on this, because once it gives a broad framework, the detailing has to be worked out now. So I cannot comment on anything for which the detailing has not already been worked out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Sapna.
I was asking that when you said public and private partnership is happening, so how far trainings are important when we speak about 21st century skills? So are we having some private agencies as trainers, or are we just doing with the government training agencies?
Earlier, under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, the government of India used to support vocational education and skill training and all. Of course, there are two kinds of skill trainings happening currently. One is the skill training sessions organized by the Ministry of Skill Development. So now that is routed through the Department of Skill Education in the state government as well. So that is a general skill training, and the kind of skill training that we are talking about here is the skill training that happens in the schools. Under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, the government of India had given flexibility to the state government. If we want to give it to an outsourced agency, we can do that also. Or if we want to develop our own in-house manpower to give continued vocational teaching, we can do that as well. Now, earlier, government of India used to, based on the proposals by the respective state government, they used to, give each state a certain number of schools to be imparted the vocational and skill education. Now that under the new education policy, they want to extend it to all schools across the country. So I expect that under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, the funding for vocational and skill education is going to be increased considerably
Okay,
to cover
thank
all
you, sir.
schools.
Thank you.
Sumya, your turn.
Yeah, thanks, Bhavin. Good afternoon, Dr. Sundaram. I'm Sumya Yasni, Managing Editor of Education World. And my question to you is, the NEP sets a grand vision for transforming and upgrading Indian education. But unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has hugely disrupted the education, especially of government school children. And this is a worldwide phenomenon. And many countries abroad have set up special funds to help especially government school children make up for loss of learning that has happened over the past few months. Specifically to the state of Uttarakhand, do you have any plans of action as to how the learning loss of especially government children can be compensated, and how you think teachers and the state can come together to help government school children make up for the loss of learning that has happened over the past 6 months?
Okay, so we have been promoting the private schools to go for online classes, but when it comes to government schools, we have two kinds of limitations. The first limitation is, since I have already told, majority of children in government schools are coming from underprivileged groups. So the availability of devices, whether it is a smartphone or laptop, is very, very less with our children or their parents. Now, the second issue is most of these schools are located in remote areas where the internet connectivity is also an issue. So what we thought was, even though we have been giving online sessions as well, but it may not be reaching to all the intended beneficiaries. So what we thought is, let us, telecast some lessons through Doordarshan, which we started doing for classes 9 to 12. 9 to 12, we have been telecasting lessons through Doordarshan. For classes 1 to 8, we have been using the community radio. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be the best solution, but this is the best solution under the present circumstances. Now, once the schools reopen, we have already decided to reopen for class 10 and 12, and then eventually the subsequent classes will follow after giving a gap and then assessing how the schools are functioning. So we will gradually be reopening. So once we reopen, we'll have to make up for the last time, and we have to do some special classes. Maybe we have to curtail a little bit of the winter break, and maybe we have to extend our board examination dates just to ensure that the children are given adequate inputs to prepare them for their examinations. And of course, the syllabus has already been reduced by the state board as well as CBSE. Almost all the boards have reduced their syllabus. 30% of syllabus cut has happened across the boards. But still, I think we need to give some more inputs to cover for the lost time.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
We have two questions, sir. So another 4 minutes to go. This is from Tinu Jolly. Tinu Jolly is the headmaster of Shemford Futuristic School, Pinjore. I want to ask about the implementation of the multilingual approach, mother tongue being mandatory as a medium of instruction. How is this going to be implemented? I think so. Multilingualism has been the talk of the entire nation. So what is Uttarakhand prepared for, sir?
See, there has been a lot of talk going on with respect to the language. We have also seen protests in some part of the country, thinking that Hindi has been made mandatory for every children. Now, as I repeatedly have been telling, the policy document is not absolutely binding on everybody or every stakeholder. Education is a concurrent subject, and in the concurrent subject, states can take their own position also. So every state will be taking its own position. What the policy document states is, for elementary education, it has to be ideally taught through the mother tongue. Okay, so now, as far as Uttarakhand is concerned, with respect to government schools, of course, we are 100% teaching in mother tongue based education till the 5th standard. And from 6th standard, we have a few English medium schools, which actually the state is thinking of extending further. The state is coming out with some Atal leadership schools, where some 190 schools are to be transformed into English medium based schools from class 6 onwards. So class 5 onwards, we are not going to touch. Now, with respect to the private schools, I don't think the policy document puts any condition on any private school to convert into Hindi medium or any regional language medium from the English medium. So those fears are unfounded. The policy document doesn't state like.
Thank you very much, Sapna ma'am. Over to you. I think so. Closing comment, and then I think so. We'll go to our next panel.
Mr. Mani wanted to ask something. You were raising. Just
Thanks. Mani.
So, Dr. Saab, my question is there any plans of Uttarakhand government to have a tie-up with private schools, the present private schools and the present government schools? Because you have best infrastructure, which is lying vacant in many places. So any plans where you are encouraging private schools, the present private schools, to help in development and delivering skills which we have in the government schools? Because we have been trying with various mediums, but we never got success.
Okay, it's really unfortunate. Last year, we have issued a GO which enables this. We have issued a GO for school adoption of government schools. So adoption of government schools can be done by industrial houses or any business establishment, including the private schools and other higher education institutions. They can adopt any government school, and the adoption guidelines are also given very, very flexible. Suppose if some school does not want to spend any financial resources on the development of the government school, but they want to develop, want to help assist the school in developing or honing their skills, the skills of the teachers, or want to, use their own teachers to come for a couple of sessions and then come and teach the government school children. So those kind of things are also allowed. Please get in touch with the CEO here or the director or to me directly. So whatever school that you are interested in, we will allow you to do that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sundaram. It was indeed a great pleasure having you. And let me tell you, Dr. Sundaram was not keeping well. And he was the first one of all the states to just say that, yes, we want to speak about Uttarakhand and say what can be done. So I must say that why Uttarakhand is an educational hub, because of administrative, under his administration, everything is possible. And no, undoubtedly, because not only Dr. Sundaram, even his team members. So every team member who he's allocated to me that I'm in touch with, I've never seen anybody from, I shouldn't be, like, all states are good, but hats off to your administration that the way they have taken this NEP discussion for today, and everybody is there watching him. So thank you so much, Dr. Sundaram. And
Dr. Sundaram is a real edu warrior.
yeah.
Thank you very much, sir, on behalf of Education World. And
Thank you very much, sir.
soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate time and inputs. Thank you.
Okay, we move on to